Hi, I'm KR House, and I write fantasy and science fiction.
And I'm Erin, and I write fantasy fiction and poetry.
And today we're talking about writing advice, which is kind of something we do on this channel a little bit. More like writing discussions, I guess.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a lot of discourse on the internet about writing advice, and like people have lots of opinions on things. So I guess we'll just get right into it. Erin, what's like your relationship to writing advice? Like how do you approach it?
Yeah, I used to be really resistant because I was just like, no, there is no one size fits all. Everything depends. And I was really like, when I would see like writing advice on the internet, I was like, okay, but I can think of like 5 exceptions to everything you said. I have since been humbled and have a better relationship, I think, with receiving writing advice at least. Which, I mean, at that point, it wasn't like receiving it on my own stuff, just kind of like seeing different people like post things. I think one thing that has maybe helped with that is being in a writing group and kind of being in the hot seat, having to receive it and give it. I think has just given me a more kind of nuanced, like, okay, no, advice is good. Even if it's just hearing somebody else's impression, you can kind of convert that into advice sometimes too.
Yeah.
But like having other people react to it or make suggestions, like, yeah, I think that's a good thing. And you don't have to take all of it and apply it 100%. But it is, I mean, yeah, having a variety of thought is usually good for making something better.
Yes.
So, yeah, what about you?
I agree with you. I think it's helpful. I think I am the opposite of you, where I like it too much. And I definitely can use writing advice as a tool to procrastinate, or like thinking that like I can, you can't consume enough writing advice that your book is going to just come out perfect. And I think I kind of used to fall into that camp where I was like, well, if I just learn enough, then like I'll be able to then that'll guarantee my book is like a masterpiece and like whatever. And that's just not how it works. I do really love writing advice. I feel like I've learned a lot of things from different people and books and stuff on the internet. And I do think that like people can take it too far, where they're like, yes, this is like written in stone. But on the whole, I like find it helpful.
I think one kind of pitfall maybe that is common with giving writing advice, especially just general advice that you kind of find like online or in like writing books and things like that, is it's really easy to kind of read it and think that it's like black and white and like this is always implementable, and it's not that way. At least I think it's not that way. Also, I think one reason that I kind of have been resistant to the idea of a lot of writing advice is because, well, a lot of the times if it's phrased as something like never do this, or like every book should have this, your character should always do this, like it's like, well, no. But I think my fear with it sometimes is that, okay, if we're all taking the same advice, everything's going to turn out the same. Like there's not going to be as much variety, and I get really overwhelmed by that notion sometimes when I'm like, well, I don't want to change this because that's just going to make it more like this other book I've read or this other thing I've heard about. And it's like, that's not really the point. But yeah, so I think it's definitely something you kind of have to take the black and white statement and then put it through the filter of, not so much that way. Yeah. What's your take on that?
I think, well, okay, this is where like I like art a lot and I like drawing. And so I also, unsurprisingly, used to consume a lot of content about like how to draw well. And one of the things that people like, it's like almost a meme of people who like to draw of like, oh, well, how do I find my style? How do I find my art style? That's like my unique style.
Yeah.
And so many of the videos that I watched about that where people were like, stop worrying about your art style. Worry about learning how to make art, and then you won't be able to like subdue like like who you are will affect your art, and like as you learn it, you'll naturally develop it. And I kind of feel that way about writing, where I'm like, I don't know, I think I would advise people not to worry about their writing voice and just to focus on like making the best thing they can. And I think it will just like who you are will just affect your writing. I don't know if maybe that's a little too like ooh like
motivational.
Yeah, but like I think it's true. Like I will never write a Brandon Sanderson book, no matter how much I study Brandon Sanderson, unless I get to the point where like I'm copying him. Like I'm not going to accidentally make a Brandon Sanderson book in my mind. Like, I think I think, I think it is harder to stomp out uniqueness than maybe we would think.
Yeah.
But I do think you have a point that's like, there are no rules really, or like the point of learning the rules is like to break them. Yeah. And like, people say that that's kind of a stereotype too, but like, yeah, I definitely don't think it's black and white. I do kind of think some types of writing are like harder to pull off. Like one thing is like, okay, you don't write in second person. Like it's weird to read a book written in second person. Like I would advise most people not to write in second person. But I have read, but like our 5th season has chapters that are written in second person and it's great and it adds to the story. But I don't think someone should try that for their first book. Or like, I think it's very hard to pull off. So like, I think some of the more contrarian stuff sometimes is harder. But again, even that's not black and white. Like people, do whatever you want. And I think, it just comes down to like looking at your story objectively and trying to be like, okay, do I think this is good? And do I think this is serving it? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what is some writing advice you've received that you do implement? Or I guess like main pieces.
Main pieces of writing advice that I implement. One piece of writing advice that was like, feels like it should be obvious, but like, I was like, oh wow, that was really helpful. It's like, I really like the Writing Excuses podcast. And I was listening to one of the older episodes that Brandon Sanderson is in, and it was like how to write boring scenes. And I was like, yes, great. I need this because my characters are like traveling and like, I need to know, it's like, I'm bored by it. So how do I write that? And they were like, well, if you find it really boring to write, like maybe it doesn't need to be in there. It might also be boring to read. And I was like, I didn't think of that as an option, that I could just like teleport forward. But then they also said, they were like, caveat, just because you're bored, like it might still need to be there for like plot purposes. And sometimes you just have to power through. But I was like, oh, I didn't even think that like I could just cut this. Like, and I feel like sometimes advice is helpful to be like, oh, I never thought of this way.
Yeah.
So I think that's helpful. One piece of writing advice that I wish I followed, but I don't, is like know the end first. I'm like, wow, that sounds great. I haven't done that.
Yeah. See, that's one I would be like, don't think that's necessary. But yeah.
Well, it sounds super helpful.
Yeah,
I don't think it's necessary, but I think it would be great. I'm like, I can see how that helps.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. So is it just because you kind of have that framework or something to kind of like work toward? Is that kind of the idea? Is just.
Yeah, I think it's like, if you know the end, like, you can, it's like the story is going toward that point. Like, you know where you're going. So I totally see how that's helpful. What I do is more so like I don't know the end, and then I kind of get to the end, and then I go back and fix it to make it fit to the end. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and that's not a bad process either. It's just like.
Yeah. The advice isn't know the end on draft 1.
Some
know
people,
the end at some point.
Yeah. Well, some people, I mean, I don't think it's not. And that's how I view it, is I'm like, these things are helpful ways of thinking about it.
Right.
But not rules.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Brandon Sanderson calls them tools in your toolbox that you can choose to take out whenever you want. Or to leave in there.
I like that.
Yeah. Good old Brandon Sando.
Yeah.
Yeah, how about you? What's your like writing advice that you've been like, yes, this was helpful?
So my first example, I guess the one that comes to mind is weird because it's not necessarily advice about like how to write better. So I'm like, it kind of feels like a cop-out answer, but it's just to keep writing, because like you can't edit things that haven't been written, I guess, which that feels a little more motivational than necessarily advice. But I think I get caught in the trap of thinking I really have to like figure something out before I can write it. And it's like, no, sometimes you just kind of have to go, and then you can go in and fix it later. Or like, I mean, like you have to have a general sense, I guess, of what you're writing, but like you don't have to know exactly like every beat of a scene before you put a word on the page. Like that's not necessarily how it goes. Because like you were saying with the end thing, you can kind of adapt that a little bit and be like, okay, well, we'll just go back through and make sure that this has continuity after that. So yeah, I would say that's the one that comes to mind first. As far as like actual like writing, like putting the words on the page, is just not getting stuck in kind of like one element. Like when people talk about like having a little more variety,
like with like sentence structure.
I mean, kind of a little bit. So this is maybe not necessarily something that I've heard of as like one piece of advice, but I guess like what I've gathered through critique, I guess like is just kind of like not being like, oh, action, but it's like, hey, they're thinking about things while they're doing those actions. Hey, what does it kind of look like in the space where the actions are being done? Like that kind of thing of just being like, okay, you, like don't have so much tunnel vision, I guess.
Yes, I've gotten that in critiques too. Someone was like, this chapter has white space syndrome. And I was like, what's that? And it's like, I have no idea where they are. They're just like floating in space. And I was like,
oh, yeah.
Good point.
Right. So I would say those are the two that stand out the most. On the flip side, what is some bad writing advice you've received?
Writing advice. I feel like mainly just like, because of my view of like, my kind of view of writing advice of like, oh, any of it could be useful at any given point. I'm not like super hard against any like methodology. I'm like, they all might work for somebody sometime.
Right.
So the thing that first comes to mind is like people who are like, don't write about this thing. Like, don't write this genre. Like, don't write fantasy and science fiction. Or like, don't write like, I don't know, YA or whatever. And that's the main thing I've gotten from people, specifically like, don't write fantasy. Which is just, makes no sense.
Right. You're like, absolutely not.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't think so. I think, other than that, I don't think there's any writing advice that I'm like, no, this is like universally bad. I think sometimes some of the sentence structure level things, I think are overly prescriptive, where people are like, don't use adverbs. Don't use the word said. And it's like, no, that's fine to do.
Yeah, that's a particularly controversial one about said. Some people are like, hardcore only say said. Hardcore never say said.
Yeah, I'm like, maybe you change, maybe do both. Like, I don't know. I think some of it comes from like teaching writing in schools.
Yes. Yeah.
But like, if you're writing fiction, like that's not the same.
No.
Like,
no.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you'll know a lot of the times when you read it, you'll know if it's wrong. I guess. Like if it's done the bad way, I guess. But then a lot of that comes down to opinion at the same time. So I don't know.
What's like the worst writing advice you've gotten?
I can't think of like necessarily one specific piece of writing advice. I think just in my freewheeling nature about things like this, I'm just like, really any advice that says never or always. I'm just kind of like, I think I just wish people would not present it that way sometimes. But I mean, sometimes you just have to let it be good advice in spite of it being presented like that.
Take the nugget of truth, but realize that it's not universal.
Right. Yeah. Or I guess just writing advice that comes from a very formulaic way of thinking about writing. So these are not real answers to this question. I guess
no, I mean,
it's just like
really
a flavor of advice. And I'm like, I meet that advice with a lot of hesitation and suspicion.
Yeah, if they're like, never do this. Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
Exactly.
Right?
Just anything that's absolute. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of a specific one that I don't think is bad advice, but I think, again, people just take it too far is like show, don't tell. To where people are like wanting to like never, ever, ever tell. And it's like sometimes you have to like be like, no, this is what happened. And like sometimes it helps you save space on the page. Like again, like for traveling, like if they're traveling from, they're going over this mountain, but nothing interesting happens, you can be like, when they made it to the top of the mountain, like, it took them 2 weeks to get there, and like, that's okay. You don't have to like show every single thing. I think people go too far, but but that doesn't mean that on average, it's not like a good thing to think about of like trying to show. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Cool. I think that's it.
Okay. So those are our thoughts on writing advice. Do you love or hate writing advice? What's the best or worst writing advice you've ever gotten? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.